Hello everyone and welcome to CodeCast by STLTechTalk. We are going to bring you the content you want and need: instructional, informative, unique, and insightful commentary on programming and technology. Coming to you live from robots to roadhouses, my name is JJ Hammond, and I'm joined tonight by two coding experts. Up first, our guest. She wrote Java quietly for 10 years until 3 years ago. She discovered conferences, speaking, functional programming, and the excitement of the software industry as it's changing and growing. Now she has a dream job at Outpace Systems, writing Clojure from home while pairing remotely with great developers from all over the country. Meanwhile, she speaks at conferences and blogs. Her mission is to bring lessons from other paradigms back to object-oriented object-oriented developers to reveal the most useful bits in a way that's immediately useful. The amazing Jessica Kerr. Say hello, Jessica. How are you doing? And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, JJ.
It is our pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. However, this show is not possible without the coolest guy I know, and quite a handsome man, I might add, striving to bring development knowledges to the masses, and has spent the last 20 years architecting and implementing highly scalable ASP.NET applications. Our very own Gus Emery. By the way, I'm not hitting on you. Say hello, Gus.
Sure you're not, JJ. Sure you're not. Hello,
Are you ready for a fantastic show, sir?
Yeah, me too. Definitely a great, fantastic show, Jessica. Welcome on board. Glad to have you, and let's have some good tech discussions tonight, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for being our first female guest. I know that's probably not a big deal or whatever, but just thanks for being our first female guest. Yeah. Don't forget, everyone, you can follow us on Twitter, #CodeCast, to keep up with everything that's going on, or at STLCodecast. Also, you can find us on Facebook, STLTechTalk, Google+, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Windows Phone, TuneIn Radio, or listen to us directly from the site. And don't forget to visit our site at STLTechTalk.com to keep with our tech news, podcast, CodeCast. Check out our STLTechChic.com. That's our Women in Tech website. Yeah, go check it out immediately after following this. And don't forget, you can interact with the show by sending us feedback to podcast@STLTechTalk.com. And if you're watching us live, you can ask us questions via the chat room, and we'll do our best to answer those questions in a timely manner. Special thank yous go out tonight, honestly, to the Million Cups Coffee event that was this morning, because I met tons of really awesome, not just developers, but young entrepreneur startups, and it was just a lot of fun and lots of stuff to talk about in a later post that I'm going to do for our site. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into the reason why we're all here tonight, and that is to talk to Jessica, and I'll go ahead and toss the first question out. What got you into development and technology?
Oh, I wanted a job.
You know what? That's a good enough reason as any.
In college, I studied physics because
Sure.
it sounded interesting, which it totally was. But the thing about physics is you can go to school for a good 12 years and then still struggle to get work somewhere in the country making what you can make with a development job right out of college.
Right. Or barely any college at all, and just a hard knocks college, if you know how to do. I cannot tell you how many job offers I get for, hey, you know Java? Oh my God, we'll give you a job. Hey, you know Java? We'll give you a job. Hey, you know Java? We'll give you a job. It's like, oh my gosh, my LinkedIn's like ding, 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 ding.
You know, a lot of that is luck, though. Some of us, like I did pick Java. I started in C, and then I was at Amdocs at the time, and they switched to Java. So
Okay.
I got trained in it and learned all my good object-oriented programming skills. And that path has just happened to lead me to the sweet spot in the job market right now.
Oh yeah, totally.
Definitely.
Yeah, Java with Spring and Hibernate. And fortunately, I've done even more interesting things since then. And also okay, this time it wasn't total luck. It was speaking and blogging and actively taking control of my own learning path that led me to a Scala job, and now Clojure. Two more areas where the demand is just huge.
Yeah. So, but to go back just a little bit further, so you were studying physics, and the next thing you know, you're programming, or was that your minor?
A friend of my aunt's got me an internship at Federal Express for the summers. So that was another piece of good fortune, and that was programming. And I discovered that it's really fun. I'm good at it, and I really liked the whole part where you go home at 5:30 and there's no homework.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah.
I've gotten over that now, and like.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say. I don't stop, but I'm not like most. I would say I'm unlike most people in that regard, because if I'm not doing one thing, I'm doing another thing. But I get what you're saying by that. It's something that you can kind of leave at work. It's not one of those like, aha! It's, this derivative of this particular thing, of this particular thing, of this particular theorem.
In college, there's always some paper that you should be working on, or some test you should be studying for, or some project you should. And I love that with work. When I leave at 5:30 or 6, that's it for work, and anything else is my own decision and bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And refreshing.
Yeah, and if you don't want to touch a computer, you don't. Which is
right. You're not like, I'm going to fail this class if I don't do something. It's like, you know what? It's cool. I can walk away. Just walk away. Put it down and walk away. So then you did the Federal Express, and then you walk me through a little bit more of the trajectory. Then after that,
so I graduated in 1999, which was a sweet year for a programming job. I had a job in November when I graduated in May, and since then it's just been following what's interesting. I had my first job at Amdocs for 5.5 years. And since then, I've discovered that that's way too long to spend at least on one project or with one style of code and in one language. And now I try to move around more.
So tell me, what makes programming interesting to you? Other than the good job.
For one thing. Oh, well, okay, yeah. So I went into it because it's a good job, but I don't get all excited and go speak at conferences and stuff because it's a good job. No. Programming is interesting. For one, it's basically doing puzzles all day. And that's fun.
That's true, yeah.
It's doing puzzles, and it's an incredibly powerful medium that we can sculpt these words in the text editor and have the world change. First, just the world in our computer, but then we can push that out, and the whole internet is different, and that affects who knows how many people. We can really accomplish a lot with just a little twiddling of our fingers. That's a blast.
Yeah,
that is really cool.
It definitely is. So you said you started out with Java and whatnot. So what made you pick Java? Was that?
Like I said, I didn't. I just got lucky.
Gotcha. Okay, so how do you like Java, and what other languages have you used?
Oh, a little bit of C, and then a lot of Java, and now I'm doing Scala and Clojure, which are both functional programming languages on the JVM. Well, to be fair, Scala is very much a hybrid and is actually more object-oriented than Java. Clojure is strictly functional.
Okay, well, can you just... Oh, sorry.
Go on?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. They both run on the JVM, so knowing Java really well totally helps with those. And also, all three of the languages and everything on the JVM, it's solid. You can do everything with Java. There's libraries for everything, and those libraries are totally usable in Scala and Clojure too. It's very practical and dependable. The tooling is excellent. What's not to like? Curly braces. I don't like curly braces.
Curly braces, nice.
Yeah, and semicolon.
So funny you said solid. I was like, yeah. I don't know. I'm on that word kick lately.
Oh, you went solid, huh?
Solid, yeah.
So tell me, what is functional programming?
All right. First of all, it's one of those overloaded terms that means nothing.
Right. God, I hate those.
But that's everything that gets popular, right? Agile used to mean something. In my opinion, the essence of functional programming is attempting to write most of your code in a way that is data in, data out. That's my phrase. And what it means is it doesn't access global state. It doesn't go digging around in the world around it. It doesn't modify its input. That's just rude. We're past that. And it doesn't change the world around it either. So anything that hits a database or reads from an environment variable or even writes to a file, although I usually make an exception for logging, that would not be data in, data out. And you want to avoid that, partly because it's hard to test, and also because it simplifies your thinking about your code. When the only thing a function operates on is its input, and the only thing it does is return a value, then the declaration of the function pretty much documents the whole thing. Give it a good name, and you've established its purpose, its mission, and its limitations. Programming these days, as our programs get bigger and bigger, is all about what we decide not to do. It's all about limiting ourselves to narrow the scope of what we have to think about while we're coding. So we don't have to think about the whole program, or the whole world, or the whole environment. Let's just think about the parameters coming in and just worry about sending something out. It's testable, it's compact, and then your functions in functional programming, your functions get smaller and smaller and smaller until you just got a whole bunch of them and you string them together, and each little piece is really easy to think about.
Kind of like add tax or subtotal rows or something to that effect, right?
Mm.
Yeah, that's some of the things that you'll wind up doing. Just each thing one step at a time, depending only on its input. Then, when you do want to affect the world, because you need some input from the database and sometimes the environment. You do all of that at the beginning. Send it through the little functions and transformations that make all the decisions where the business logic is. That's the important part, and that should all be data in, data out. And then at the end of your little, after you've made the decisions and decided what to do, you do any database insertions, you change things on the screen, you do what you need to do. It sounds limiting, but it turns out once you start thinking that way, it isn't. Thinking of our programs as transformers of data that take something in, make some decisions, and send something out. A web request is a perfect example. You get some HTTP request in, you turn it into an HTTP response, and that goes out and back out into the world.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And it kind of makes sense that you're still, well, that this is an area for you because of how much it's focused on mathematics and kind of that an academic use of programming?
So actually, I completely avoid learning category theory. And that's because I don't just want to use functional programming, I want to teach it.
Oh, right. So you need to teach it to people who actually care.
Yeah. Last week I was at Lambda Jam, and Eric Meyer, head in the box on Twitter, he gave a rousing, entertaining, passionate keynote about how, no, you can't do programming without using math because look at all these cool tricks you can do.
Right.
And you know what? I can totally do those cool tricks because you told me I can, and I don't need to know the fancy mathy names for them. I'm all for a lot of people learning that higher level math and then telling me what I can do and what tricks I can perform that don't change the meaning of my code, all the little transformations and cool tricks. You know what? I don't have to understand category theory to use it.
Got it.
So that's my goal. Some people, Eric Meyer was like, you can't do programming without knowing math. In my opinion, he's completely wrong.
I would agree.
I can't do programming without somebody knowing math. It doesn't have to be me.
Well, because you get these diehards, right, that just are like, math is God. Math is the closest thing you're going to get to, writing to the machine or whatever the case may be. Like math is, the one true thing. And in my experience, that's not like you said. It's there, sure, and somebody needs to understand that, but that's not what I do.
Right. Does it make him a better programmer? Absolutely. Yeah. Does it make him a better programmer than me? Probably.
Yeah.
But it's not a killer thing, you know. It's not one of those things that I think it's a misconception that when people are studying this field or wanting to learn more about it, can get easily bogged down in mathematical lingo and can really get bogged down in that. And instead of, because the most of the programming involves trial and error, and you're not doing things if you're writing them down on paper. You know, does that make sense? So, so you're not pushing things out the door. You're not making things. You're not solving problems if you're theoretical. And that's where I think a lot of that argument breaks down, because a lot of it's theoretical as opposed to actually applicable. You know.
I think we totally need people doing that theoretical and teaching it to us, teaching the tricks that they get out of it.
Right.
The great reason
you do the hard stuff, and I will steal from you. You know.
Yeah, exactly. You write this awesome library that has super great performance. I'll just use it, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you need a lot more developers like that who just take that great stuff that the highly theoretical people have created and apply it to things people want.
Yep, absolutely.
Definitely. Totally understand that. Makes complete sense to me. So, Jessica, what are you going to show us tonight?
Oh, well, let's see. I thought I would show a little bit of Java 8 features. This is like level 1 functional programming.
Perfect.
And this will be completely applicable to people doing C#, although it'll look very familiar to them because C# is way ahead of Java. I just completed a Pluralsight course on functional programming in Java.
Oh, Pluralsight. You know that.
Perfect.
Good Lord. You know, you could just sit there and just the amount of information that's there is mad crazy. But so this works just for our audience. This is so. What are you running this on, and what is this like? Explain the machine you're running it on and how you're running it and all that.
All right. Well, I'm on a Mac. And I'm
no, don't boo her. Don't boo her. It's okay.
I'm a presenter.
That's right.
Any professional presenter uses a Mac.
That's right.
Also, as a developer, honestly, I'll never develop on anything else again if I can help it, because I close it, I take it to the other room, I open it, and it's right there.
Yeah, and it's fast.
I wait for it to start up again.
Yeah. And it's fast, and it's solid, and yeah.
Yeah, and it holds stickers really well.
Yes, it does.
It does, yeah. It totally does that. Yeah, go to any campus and you'll see that.
Speaking of, write that down, JJ. Need stickers.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Get that out later.
Yep, absolutely. So you're using a Mac, but and doing a presentation with Keynote and all that. But more specifically, what are you using to show? Like, what's all that?
So IntelliJ is the Java IDE.
Okay.
Of bestness. To be fair, I use Emacs to write Clojure, Vim to write Scala, and IntelliJ to write Java.
You sound like a walking commercial for editors.
I know, right?
No, I don't know why I do this to myself, because I keep switching back and forth, and I'm not fast in anything anymore.
That's you can. Oh man, it's so easy to spread yourself too thin. But okay. So and then the other thing I wanted to note is that there are elements of, so to not scare some of our C# developers away, there are a lot of elements and constructs, for functional style in C#. So
C# completely supports functional programming. You guys have like all the trickle down from F#.
Yep.
Which, in my opinion, is, if I could choose any language, I would choose F#. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. I'm ready to see some stuff.
Yeah, please.
I will share IntelliJ. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. So for this example, I want to show some processing of a collection. In Java 8, we have the new concept of stream, which is a beautiful thing. Now, watch out. Stream is a very, very overloaded term. Specifically, these are Java 8 streams, and they work a certain way. which I'll show in the pictures in a minute. But let's say we want to read some lines from a file. This is also Java 8, and it's so much easier than reading lines from a file in many earlier versions of Java. What this does is open a file. For convenience, it's this file. It's this .java file that we're looking at right now. And it gives us the lines of a file in a stream. But when I make this call, I'm not actually performing any action. It's lazily evaluated, these streams are. So the lines are only going to be read in as I use them. The beautiful things that you can do with streams, see if it'll show us, is you can do functional style collections processing, which the goal here is to use a declarative style instead of for loops, which would say how to go through the series of lines in the file. We're going to say what we want to do with them. So say, for instance, I want to classify the different lines as in the files. I would use the map method, which honestly is like terribly named for historical reasons, but it does a transformation of each string as it comes through this stream is going to get passed through a function. I'm going to pass it this classify function by name. Java 8 finally has method references, so I can pass the method into map. Now each line of the file is going to get classified as it goes, and it's going to be identified as code, a comment, blank, or imported. But still nothing happens at this point because the stream is lazy. To do anything with it, I need to ask it for a solid value. In Java 8 streams, you do this with the collect method, and you pass it a collector, which is a thing that knows how to accumulate stuff. There's a bunch of them available in the collectors utility class. No, it's not countify, it's counting. And for instance, I can say, all right, take all those strings and just count them.
It's too bad it isn't countify. I like countify.
I agree. I do too. If I were naming it, you would all wish I weren't. All right. So then we can do a simple thing of count the lines in the file. In order to see them as they come through, I'm going to add the peek method to my little stream processing. And I'll just tell it to system.out println, pass that method in. And let's run that. Right click, run. Okay, it saw 46 lines. Ooh, this file's gotten longer since the last time I ran this. And it printed each one as it came through, and it counted them. But that's kind of boring, so let's have it actually count them by their line type. So instead of counting, I'm going to use grouping by and tell Java 8 to group by the particular IntelliJ. Oh, right. Now I'm getting a map. It's actually line type to long. Very good. The grouping by collector says categorize all the things that come through and then make a map of categories to streams of stuff. And then pass each of those streams of stuff through the counting collector. It's actually, there's a lot of code worked up, a lot of logic worked up into just a few lines here. If I run it again, it should summarize the lines by their different types. Right here, this is a lambda expression, which Java finally has in Java 8, that says take a string and turn it into, it just return itself. I could have used the identity function for that, but I wanted to put in a lambda.
Yeah, it took Java quite a long time to get that, didn't it?
Oh my gosh, forever. But finally, we have anonymous function declarations inline. This operates a lot like an anonymous inner class with a single method. In fact, it implements an interface with a single abstract method, the function interface in this case, which has the single abstract method call. However, there's more to it in Java 8 than just generating an anonymous inner class. It's much more efficient than that. It does not actually instantiate a whole new instance of a class. It does some fancy invoke dynamic bytecode stuff to make this tremendously more efficient. I used to use a style very similar to this in Java 6 using Guava's Fluent Iterable library, and you could still do map. They call it transform, which is even better. You can filter out the lines you don't want, and you can use a similar style to this, but there you are using anonymous inner class instances, and it's less efficient. Java has really adopted this style of passing functions, of declaring small functions inline, and thank goodness. My goal now is to show people how this can improve our code. I don't have to do for loops. I don't have to tell it how to go through the stream. And what I'm getting for free when I do this is, for one, lazy evaluation. This file could be bigger than fits in memory, and that would be fine because it's only holding a few strings, however many it chunks them by, a few strings in memory at a time, and they're getting reduced down into just their counts, just the counts of the classifications as they're processing. There's a lot of efficiency here, and then if I wanted to do that in parallel, all I have to do is say parallel type. And I've converted my stream into one that will do its mapping and any filtering, things like that, on multiple threads.
That's nice. That's much nicer than C#, actually.
Really?
Yeah, C# still has, you still have to functionally declare the parallel for each. So.
That's true. The parallel thing is pretty slick. It's very few lines of code to pop it on a thread pool. The negative is you don't get any control over what thread pool it uses.
Yeah, etc. Yeah, same with C#. I've done some parallel for eaching, and actually every time I've run the exact code, I've come up with different numbers. So I stopped using it.
Different output? That's interesting. Different times I would totally expect. It's not terribly predictable. So that's okay. That's a really simple example of using Java 8 streams. One thing I've learned that a lot more things are collection processing than I thought, and small functions defined in line are more interesting than I thought. For instance, take a look at the classify method here. I take each line in, and then I'm going to check if it starts with import, it's an import. If it's empty, it's blank. If it's got comments at the beginning, no, I'm not handling multi-line comments. Sorry. It's got a comment here. Oh, you know what? I don't have any comments. Let's put a comment in. There's a happy comment. Now, if I run it, my goal was to see some comments counted, but it wasn't counted. It thought it was code. Oh, look, that's because I was doing starts with the comment symbol, but it starts with some spaces. One thing that I've learned in functional programming is I don't go down in here and start adding trim deep down in the function. If I want to change the input to a different format, I just do that in the transformation process. So if I can tell my string to be string.trim, I could also use a method reference there, and suddenly all of the strings are automatically trimmed, and I don't have to go worrying about that inside my classify method. Get the input exactly the way I want it before I pass it in keeps my function simpler. Now I have a comment. Okay, but the weird, so now I want to do something a little weird. One thing about functions, passing them around and storing them and returning them from other functions, That's the core mechanism of functional programming, and it allows us to remove code duplication to a much finer level. For instance, I don't like all this if, else if, blah, blah, blah. I would rather have this condition encoded next to the line type. So let's pop over to where I did that, and it looks a little strange. For my enum, I made a public final field. This is another thing I do. Functional programming is very big on immutability, on not changing anything inside a class, but just allocating new objects with slightly different contents whenever you need to change them. Now, when I write Java, most of my fields are public final. Actually, pretty much all of my fields are public final. Occasionally, I'll have a private one. When they're final and nobody can change it, it doesn't hurt me to declare this public. Now, in Java, it actually is really hard to achieve true immutability, but this is where I take a page from the Ruby community. And the Ruby community, that language will let you do frickin' anything, and most of the things it will let you do are a bad idea. So they just don't do those things. They have really strong idioms. And I can use that in Java too and just choose not to modify stuff. So I'll let it be public.
You are not the first person to say that and probably won't be the last, that's for sure. Even in this week, I've talked to people who've said that same thing.
Awesome. Good. I'm glad that's spreading around. Right, so public final, that's a little weird. But this field is also a function. A predicate is a function that returns a Boolean. So isItMe has a test method that will return a Boolean. And I'm supplying that test method here in these lambda expressions. So now the criteria for is it a comment is right next to comment. And the criteria for blank is right next to blank. I like the grouping here of the logic with its name. And unfortunately, code just has to be last because that's the default. I want everything else to be called code.
I do like that.
And now here's where it gets weird. I'm going to make a stream of those functions. Actually, I'm just making a stream of line types and then calling the functions inside them, which is a little less weird. But I take the values of those, wrap them in a list because the list has the .stream method. That's a pain. Java. And then I can take that stream and as I classify a particular line, I put that line inside the lambda expression. The lambda expression has access to variables outside its scope, like here in the method scope, only as long as those are final. Java's a little more forgiving, and I don't have to actually declare this final. It just notices that it's final, that I'm not changing it anywhere, and it will let me encode it into this lambda expression. All right, so now I'm filtering the list of line types based on whether they apply to this line. So at this point, my line type will have, let's see, if I have a particular, say for a comment line, it'll include comment and it'll include code, because both of those would be evaluate to true for the comment, but I don't even get that far. In fact, I don't even wind up evaluating the code one, because as it's coming through the stream, one of the, comment will succeed in the filter, and it'll come through to the find first method, which grabs only the first element of the stream, and the second one will never be evaluated because it's not needed. So I'm taking these line types, evaluating their isItMe function on the line that comes in, taking the first one that fits. Now that actually returns an optional type, which is also new to Java 8. This is what you use instead of ever using null. Null is your enemy. That's another thing I've learned from functional programming. And optional either contains, in this case it's an optional line type, so it either has a line type or it doesn't. This or else throw says if you don't have a line type, then barf with this runtime exception. Otherwise, I'm going to return that line type out of the classify function. this illustrates that there's a lot more collections processing in what you do than you think until you start trying to make everything a transformation of data. In this case, the data is the line types and their predicates, and I'm transforming that into exactly one line type that applies to the input line. Very strange. It works the same way if I run it. It doesn't look any different, but I just love how the predicates are right next to here, and a little bit of those if else is duplicated. I'm going to switch my screen over to Keynote for a sec, if I can figure that out. Turn it off, turn it on, and pick this. I want to show you how I picture these streams of data and the collection processing. This is a page from my Pluralsight course, and unfortunately, I can't do the animations tonight. It doesn't work with Google Hangouts. But you can see here, the stream is like a faucet, and the filter and map actually get attached to the faucet, and the collect triggers pulling data from the faucet. So it's like the hand reaches up, grabs something out of the faucet, passes it through the filter, passes it through the transformation, puts it into the collector, keeps reaching up and grabbing data for as long as it needed it. If instead of a collector I'd called find first, it would have stopped already. But it keeps reaching up till it's pulled all the data from the stream, one bit at a time, which is fantastic for memory consumption. And then finally, this outputs something out of the collection. Yeah, it looks something like that. I miss my animations. The pipeline of...
I'm there with you, though, on my mind, though. I can see it just going up, pulling down, going up, pulling down, going up, pulling down.
Cool. And thinking of it as a data transformation pipeline does a lot of good. And then each of these little functions that I pass to filter and map and all those are highly testable. They're really small, and they're really easy to test, and I can hook them all together. I can also pass in a stream. I could make a process method and pass in a stream that I generated and test to make sure I'm getting the right output. I don't have to do it from a file in real life because it's doing all of that gathering information from the file system at the beginning.
That is really cool. Love it. Makes it so much simpler to read and use and actually document your code, right? At least that's what I saw.
You know, I think so. There's pushback that I've gotten in the past from this kind of style from Java developers who are used to their for loops and are comfortable with the for loops. The goal is to write highly readable code that says what it wants to do, and you don't have to worry about how. Let those brilliant mathematicians write the libraries that do the how.
You need to say that one more time, because if I come across any more freaking code that's just junk the way it was written, I'm gonna...
You know what? If it works, it's not junk. But it is frustrating when you have to go back and look at code that's all snarled about going through the steps that you want the computer to take. That's great for your intro to programming class, but
it's like shattering something that you didn't even know what it looked like at first, and then somebody going put it together, and you're like, no.
Oh.
You know?
True. But you have to watch out. What you find easy to read is different from what I find easy to read. It's different from what the rest of my team finds easy to read. And you have to break apart what is actually readable and what is just familiar.
I guess that's best practices type thing going on. You know, like if everybody kind of has an understanding of the more the conventions, I guess you could say, then there's more of an idea behind how that went down as opposed to just blatantly not caring.
Very true.
Sometimes.
Very true. Very true. So, Jessica, what tempted you into speaking?
Well, another speaker asked me at one point, have you ever thought about speaking?
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't, honestly. I was like, oh, you know, that would be awesome, because I had thought I'd been to some conferences. I had been to a conference a couple times, which was no fluff, just stuff. And I assumed you had to be an expert to speak about something at a conference. And to be fair, most of the no fluff, just stuff speakers are experts, relatively experts in what they talk about. But no, really, to speak at a conference, or even more so at a user group, all you have to have is an hour's worth of stuff to share. You need to be like a few hours ahead of the other people there, of some of the other people there.
Yeah.
And when people ask a question, I don't always know the answer. In fact, I usually don't. But somebody in the audience does.
Mm-hmm.
And
or when somebody asks, you're like, okay, next question, please. No, you just kind of blow right past.
I'll get somebody's email and try to find out and email them later.
Yeah.
That's rare. Usually somebody in the audience knows, and then I learn something too, which is a bonus.
What is that?
Hmm?
What is that? What did you learn?
What do I learn?
What do you learn? What do you
I
like?
learned whatever the heck they asked about, and the other person.
Do you have, just off the top of your head, do you have a good example of that, of maybe when you were first starting off in the speaker circuit? Because it's difficult to communicate properly sometimes, especially when you're given those first keynotes or those first, or no, sorry, keynotes. I'm stuck in that wording convention right at the moment. But when you're given that presentation, and is there a good example you could give us of somebody asking you a question, then you going back and researching, and then finding out, hey, this is actually something pretty cool?
I don't have a specific example, but when I started speaking, I was speaking about Android development. Mainly because I wanted to speak, and there was demand for that at conferences.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so there's no freaking way I'm going to become an expert about that. But I narrowed in on, let's see, my first conference talk was about persistence in SQLite on Android. Narrowed in on just the persistence alternatives, went through when you'd use each one, wrote a demo app that only worked on my phone, because Lord knows I'm not going to test it on everything in the Android ecosystem. No thank you. That's the main reason I don't do Android.
I'd rather jump off a cliff with rocks at the bottom.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Samsung is a rock, and HTC and all those other ones. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I was not an expert by any means in the Android development at all, but I did know everything I needed to know about the persistence options. So as soon as someone in the audience asked a question that was a little out of that scope, someone else in the audience answered it. Because someone else in the audience knew a lot about UI development on Android, but not everything I had to say about persistence.
Right.
You could find a narrow enough scope to give a presentation that's really helpful to people without being an expert in the field by any means.
Yes, definitely true. So how would you describe the community of speakers and everything that you've met along the way?
That's an interesting question. Gus, you're .NET, right?
Yep.
So you go to St. Louis Days of .NET and the other .NET conferences. And the .NET conferences, the first one I went to was Code Mash in Ohio. And I was blown away by how much fun it was and how much socialization there was, because that doesn't happen at No Fluff Just Stuff, which is the traveling Java conference. Fantastic content, no women speakers, but no socialization. And .NET conferences have a lot of socialization, and I love that. But they also, there's a lot of evangelists in the .NET side compared to in the Java and Ruby side. So you see a lot of the same people when you go to these different conferences.
Gotcha.
Like at the speaker dinner, which is totally fun. I love that at KCDC. I see my friends. But then now I speak at a lot of multidisciplinary conferences. Like Strange Loop. My other favorite is Code
We'll be there.
in London.
We'll be there. Strange Loop. Score.
Yeah. Best programming conference in the whole world, and it's in our city. Sweet. But I speak at Ruby conferences. I've spoken at a Python conference. Lambda Jam, which was functional but otherwise multidisciplinary, and it's really interesting to see the different cultures. Python is extremely friendly to women. They have PyLadies, and that one was just really friendly to women and other underrepresented groups. Ruby, I learned Ruby in order to speak about Ruby because I wanted to go to Ruby conferences because Ruby people are the most fun.
I haven't met a Ruby I didn't like. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the Ruby group in St. Louis.
I'm sure they're out there because everybody's got one of those, but I haven't met one yet. I think if you don't already know who Brad Urani, he was a guest on the show. He was talking about Ruby on Rails and that was solid. That was a nice presentation.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Ruby, it speaks to people, and it was created for developer joy, and it shows. Most of the Ruby developers are happy to be Ruby developers.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they definitely are.
Differences in the culture.
And that affects the productivity, what is being done and how it's being done, and that kind of matters. I mean, going forward, because the cult-like atmosphere that languages have, and the followings that they have.
True.
Yes.
The Java stuff, everybody wants open source.
Yes.
And Ruby, everything's got to be open source, and Python too. Whereas .NET, people just use Microsoft stuff, which is amazingly different from Java. Now, a lot of the Microsoft stuff is better than anything that's out there in the Java ecosystem. But there's this exploration that goes on in the open source community, which is really fascinating, and thus growth. And then Microsoft takes the best of it and publishes their own version of it. Good for them. Oh, I'm really excited about Project Orleans.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
That looks
I wish we had some more bandwidth to talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Microsoft does some totally awesome stuff. But I recommend to Microsoft developers, go to a conference that's not .NET, or if you go to one of the multidisciplinary ones like KCDC, that's a great one. Go to some talks about stuff you've never heard of.
Yep,
Just get some ideas and different ways of thinking about stuff.
I totally agree with you. And now that Microsoft is starting to open source just about everything in their development catalog, it's going to change the face of development, I think. But we'll see. We'll see how far the open source goes, right?
Well, the plural side is going multidisciplinary.
Yep, exactly. And I love learning new things, so I love walking into Java sessions or Android sessions or iOS sessions, because you always learn something from them, no matter what you're going to code next, in my opinion, anyway.
Absolutely. Yep. Some sort of idea, or just a different word, maybe.
Yes.
Or a way of looking at the problem.
Yeah, or what map means in Java, right? And we could do that. Let's see if we can do a parallel function in .NET, right? Off a system.object or something.
Yeah,
just make it work. Make it cool.
What it looks like and what the differences are and what the
trade-offs. All trade-off.
Oh my gosh, I just had this dream of all of us like doing a hack night or something and me just soaking it all in. Yes.
Well, have you been to Code Until Dawn yet?
No, I'm going. When's the next one? I can't. It's on my calendar. I'll probably, but I'm more than likely going to it. So. Which
is the good point. If you are in St. Louis, other cities too, I just know the ones in St. Louis, fantastic user groups. Go to one you don't know. If you're stuck on it being practical for work, go to JavaScript. Everybody codes in something and JavaScript, right?
Yes. Yeah, anything web-based is going to have JavaScript in it. Hands down, end of story. That's it. Yeah. Exactly. So, Jessica, tell me, what do you do away from the keyboard? What are your hobbies and passions when it's not a computer?
That's a good question. So I have two daughters. They're ages 6 and 9, and my goal is to keep them alive.
Which is actually harder than it sounds.
Well, they're girls. That helps with that. They don't jump out of trees or anything.
Right.
But I try to do that without squashing their craziness and let them be extremely silly and default to yes. One day last summer, I came outside and they had taken all the eggs in the house and hurled them at trees, maybe in the general direction of each other. And I was like, what do I say? What do I say? I was like, did you leave any for breakfast?
Sure.
No. next time, leave some for breakfast.
Right.
Yes.
But other than that, I was like, shoot, that sounds like a great idea. Now,
which I
once
like
in a
about
while,
it-
they'll be like, Mom, we want some eggs to throw, and I'll buy some cheap eggs. We'll throw them in a tree. It doesn't make any sense, but it's actually really fun.
Doesn't have to make sense.
My
Really.
neighbors already think I'm insane, so me throwing eggs at a tree would probably not change that, so I might do that.
Go do that, JJ. Take pictures, please.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
That's cool, though. It's nice to see a fully rounded person, right?
Yeah, that's...
It's one thing to see, this person that knows programming, but it's nice to see that there's something behind them as well.
Yeah, and
That's
there's...
what we bring out on this show.
That is cool, yeah.
Yesterday, I was super frustrated, and I was like, "Oh, my rich social life and family life are interfering with my hiding in a room and coding." And,
So I gotta ask you if this happens to you guys, man. If you've been coding and you just you're stuck in this like your mental box, if you will, or whatever, and then you go to your significant other or whoever or kids or whatever, and you treat them like a program. You're like, okay, if this, then this, if else, and you start doing that in your head, and you're like, oh my god, I gotta walk away. I find myself doing that to my wife sometimes. She's like, you're programming me right now, and I'm like, oh.
That's just you.
Yes, that's probably just me.
Take the break. It is really, really hard to shift gears between coding
Yeah.
and children.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh well, just
Or
for
anything
me,
else.
it's just hard. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I want to kind of push out there is as I use Pluralsight, I'm a big fan. For some ungodly reason, I haven't had a chance. Well, I actually know why I haven't had a chance to look at your stuff yet. Is because there's a plethora of stuff I'm going through. But where can our audience go to find your courses? What is it called, and all that?
I have one course which is functional programming with Java.
Okay.
And the examples are all in Java, but I'm actually kind of proud of the explanations that I have of the data transformations, of external versus internal iteration, of referential transparency. There's a lot of functional programming concepts in that course that completely apply to C#.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So
Perfect. That's awesome.
That's my only Pluralsight course for the foreseeable future, because oh my gosh, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's a whole thing. Also, where can our audience follow you, find you, and where are you most active on?
I'm Jessica Kerr on Twitter, and I'm very active there. I tweet some philosophy, mostly code. And then my blog, I think the URL is in a picture.
It's right underneath you. Yep.
There you go.
Tron.com.
Yep. I throw stuff up there. Some of those posts are just.
Jessitron.
I know I'm going to need this later, so I'm just going to put it here so that Google will find it for me when I need it again.
Yep.
But also.
That's funny. Yeah.
Also, there's philosophical stuff, philosophy of code, that is. I like to use software as an analogy for life. In fact, I have a Tumblr about that. I haven't posted that in a while, but there's TISTIL, True in Software, True in Life. .tumblr.com is a fun one.
Totally. Oh man,
I'll have to write that one down.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I listen to these shows back, and because a lot of the times we talk about so many wonderful things. It's hard to kind of, in one shot. Get it, but that's something I'll definitely have to check out. So let's go ahead and move on to our last question that we always ask our guest, and Gus usually takes the control, but I wanted to do it this time around. Gus.
Please.
We usually ask our questions to pick. We usually ask our guests to pick a question, and you have picked. How do you see technology changing within the next 3 to 5 years?
They were all the same question. They're all about predicting the future.
They are.
Okay.
Okay. Oracle time. What's going on? What do I do? Delphi. Now.
The future, I think, where we're going to improve is in automating, is in getting better at what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're moving away from this waterfall model with handoffs of some people do the requirements and then some people write the code and some people do the deployment and some people do the tests. When you're just stuck in the middle of part of the system, it's really hard to learn.
Yeah.
Really hard to improve the system. Whereas what I see it shifting toward is kind of sideways of that, more of a layered process architecture, where there's the business people coming up with not just coming up with the requirements, but coming up with theories of what would make life better for our customers.
Okay.
And then the developers supporting them in answering that question by implementing features, and not just features, but also visibility into the software so that we can answer that question of, is it helping? Are people using it?
Right.
But then what you wind up doing is the developer needs to go from everywhere, from understanding the business and why we're doing it, because otherwise how would you know how to code in the information to determine whether you succeeded, all the way through deployment and support after deployment of determining whether it succeeded. We're becoming less specialized. I see this a lot at conferences, especially at smaller companies. We're becoming less and less specialized, which, holy cow, how are we supposed to know all of that?
Yeah.
The back end and the front end and the operations, the deployment and everything else?
Yeah.
And the answer is there's more people underneath us, in this layering, that are supporting us. And those are the operations tooling team, for instance, that makes deployment tools. They don't do the deployment. They don't take away the decision from the people who are trying to take a broader view. They just supply the abstraction that says, here's how to deploy, here's how to know whether it's a good time to deploy, what's the usage on the side, is stuff down, here's how to know whether your deploy works. And in the meantime, they have these tools. You've got Docker, you've got virtual machines now, you've got Netflix has a whole plethora of tools that are used for making deployments and finding out how they're doing and working. And so there's a whole nother layer of people that understand that stuff.
Right.
And I think it's going to keep going down, where we don't take the decisions away. We instead support decisions with more information, and you get people being more and more technical and understanding closer and closer to the machine level, but just providing what the people using their stuff need in order to make their decisions, at the top being the business people who are following a feature all the way through.
Do you see that as being, do you see that solution as being a language type of solution, or or just a general change in the tool set that we use?
I think it's tools.
Okay.
I really think it's tools and libraries. You can think of it as, if Waterfall is a framework where you've got project management takes the requirements and drops them into the developers and takes the code and delivers it to the testers. This is more of a library architecture. Layers and layers and layers of tooling.
Okay.
And it's totally overwhelming, because I mean, you've got your frameworks, and then your jQuery, and then your JavaScript, and then your browser, and then the back end and everything there. Oh, and your CSS, and there's just so many different tools to use.
Right.
That we have to somehow divide responsibilities, divide expertise, because we can't know all of it without taking away decisions.
Yep. Gus, thoughts?
No, I think it's totally true. I've been seeing a shift towards jack of all trades for about 2 years, I think, in all of the companies that I've worked for, where a little knowledge everywhere is much more susceptible and good for the company than somebody that's a perfectionist, because or can drill down into one place, because they can contract that person. They don't need them for the entire year. They need them for 2 months, or they need them for 6 months, or one project, or something to that effect. So I totally agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And I like the library analogy, actually. That made a lot of sense to me.
Cool.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a great response. All right, so moving on to our announcements section. Gus, tell us what you got going on, sir.
Well, I've got that conference coming up in I think it's 2 weeks now, August 11th through the 13th, somewhere in that range anyway. Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells should be a fun fun couple of days. I'll be there a couple of days and back. And then Dev Connections in September in Vegas. I will be down there for, believe, the entire week. Yeah, Las Vegas. JJ, what do you have coming up?
JJ has Strange Loop and St. Louis Days of .NET. I am also going to be doing training at the Microsoft Store for the next couple of weeks, the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd. So if you guys want to learn a little bit from yours truly, pop into the Microsoft Store from 10 to 12. I'll be there doing different stuff like that. And then next Friday, I'm doing, I'm going to, okay, so we all know JJ doesn't have kids. Well, and if you don't know now, you know. But I don't have them because I'm probably not the best with them. But I'm going to try to teach young girls how to code. That's going to be a thing in itself because I'm not good with kids. And I've said that a million times to everybody I know. But people still want me to watch their kids, and I'm like, what do you want from me? Do you want to play with the bottle?
They like that because they're people.
Yes, I talk to kids like they're adults. Like I just say, I don't baby them. I don't any of that. I'm like, look, you know, this is how it is, and they're like, I'm down with that, dude. I'm down with that. So hey, that's how I do it. That's how I roll. Because if I'm a firm belief that if you can talk back to somebody that's bigger, taller, fatter, whatever the case may be is than you, then you're going to be just fine throughout life. Because if you know how to speak your mind and understand the problem and not be afraid to speak up, you're going to be more likely to succeed. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and months. And I'm sure there's going to be other stuff that's going to pop up, but that's what I have going on right now.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Jessica, do you have anything?
Oh, sure. Let's see. I'll be at Distill in San Francisco next week. The week after that is Steel City Ruby. Also
Nice.
on August 11th, I'm speaking at the St. Louis Ruby group about property-based testing.
I'll try to be there for that. What is that, the 11th?
Yeah.
Yes, Monday, August 11th.
Monday.
The following month is Windy City Rails in Chicago, and then Strange Loop here in St. Louis.
Yeah, yeah.
Finally, my last conference of the year in November, I will be at Code Mesh in London. I'm really excited because I get to do a joint keynote with Dan North.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, great city to do it in, too.
Yeah. And it's London. You know, that's kind of cool.
Yep.
Totally. Well, I don't know where Chris Massey is over there, but if you ever have a chance to meet him, he's a cool guy.
He's up in Cambridge.
Okay, well then never mind.
Chris or Ben from Redgate, they're great people. If you have a chance, look them up.
Wow, maybe they'll come to Code Mesh.
Yeah.
They probably will be there, actually.
They're everywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they
came
are.
to St. Louis. Come on, you know. If you come to St. Louis, you know, you're really not anywhere. Let's just be frank.
Definitely.
Well, I don't know. If you show up in South Dakota, you probably are willing to go.
Oh,
Anyways,
I also like to plug Lambda Lounge. Have you been to Lambda Lounge?
no, I need to.
It's a user group in St. Louis. It's multidisciplinary. The tagline is functional and dynamic languages, but really it's whatever the heck people find interesting. Great way to hear talks on something you never thought you wanted to hear a talk about, but you'll be glad you did.
Oh, and everybody, if you
Kansas City as well.
yeah, I was getting ready to say. But if anybody wants to know if they're in the St. Louis area, that you can either go to our site or just go to meetups or whatever, and all of these groups are there. Join them, be a part of them. Like
Definitely.
Jessica said, I mean it's really really cool going to these groups and just talking to people and stuff, because not only are they passionate, but they know what they're talking about for the most part. And there's always one guy or girl who's just like, no, that's wrong. You need to do this, this, and this. And you're like, that's the person. You know. You know, so.
Exactly.
But Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show. It was wonderful having you on. We're going to have you back on in the future to talk more about, you know, all of this. Again, hopefully we can talk about another presentation, whatever the case may be. And I hope you had a lot of fun tonight, because we enjoyed your presentation.
Yes.
Thanks.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We very much appreciated it, and I will see you sooner or later on the circuit, I'm sure.
Yes. Good deal.
All right, guys. So having said that, from the entire STL Tech Talk crew, my name is JJ, that is Gus, this is Jessica. We love and thank you for your continued support of the CodeCast by STL Tech Talk and STL Tech Talk podcast and STLTechTalk.com. For more information, just go to the site, and we will interact with you on social media and the site. So thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Great coding. We're out.